That's how deep it is in there. It's all water. Welcome back guys to the Y Explorer channel. I'm here today to share with you my new boot, the Scarpa Delta Active GTX. Fantastic pair of boots, which I purchased roughly 15 months ago. I've used them quite extensively since. But I'd like to share with you today not only the details of the boot and how they've performed, but also the story behind the boots. How I came about purchasing them, because I'd never spent that much money before in my life. And it was really quite interesting how I got led to spending £200 on a pair of boots from a place called Trek It in Hereford. There's also a story behind the sponsorship of these boots. Half the cost of these boots was sponsored by the great Lofty Wiseman, who's a dear family friend. I didn't expect to see Lofty that day, but I did, and he ended up sponsoring half the cost of the boot. So without further ado, I'd like to share the details of the boot and the stories behind them. Okay, let's take a look at the boot. First of all, the boot really wasn't hard to wear in at all. I've hiked a fair few miles in this boot already, and the leather was a real pleasure, really soft, real high quality. The sole of the boot was a different matter. It's very hard. It would take a few good multi-day hikes in order to get the soles of your feet used to that, used to the boot at the base. They say that, you know, the base of the sole of the boot is cushioned, but from what I could tell, it was just something that would take some getting used to. I did do. I was determined to do some training, and I did some road miles on this boot for that specific reason, to see what the sole of the boot was like over hard ground, because the fact of the matter is, when you're hiking, you know, you have to come onto the roads sometimes. So I did do a fair few miles on the road, and I could tell by the end of the hike that my soles would get used to it in the end, but it would take a fair few miles to do that. The boot is full grain leather, and there are only two pieces of leather in the upper part of this boot. Now that keeps it as light as possible. It's a Gore-tex boot, and so therefore is breathable and waterproof. And you have Vibram technology for the soles of the boot. As I said, the soles are meant to be cushioned, but from what I could tell, they were really quite hard. But nevertheless, Vibram are top of the range and said to be really good for what they do. You'll notice on the boot that they have what's called speed lacing. A series of, there are like rollers in the lacing technology, and you can quickly hook your lace either side and do your boot up really quickly, which I find to be really good. The weight of the boot is 1,520 grams. Now a lot of people would probably deem that very heavy. I know a lot of the trail hikers that use shoes are going to immediately turn away from a boot such as the Delta Active GTX. But for me, the boot works well in really wet conditions. and I like to keep my feet dry. Now I know a lot of trail hikers out there, you know, their argument is your feet will dry, but I know trail hikers that have actually come away with trench foot. Truly, you don't hear stories about that, but they do. They come away with trench foot and all sorts of problems because of continual wet feet. If you're hiking bog, these boots are ideal. I mean, I locate a lot of rivers. I love to locate the river sources, and that means going up to the high ground and often walking across bog. Real boggy, uneven terrain, and these boots are ideal for that. And I come out every time with dry feet. If you're also intent on walking cross country and getting off trail over rough ground that's possibly been felled, you know, a plantation that's possibly been felled, then these boots come into their own again, because a trail shoe is not ideal. You don't want a piece of sharp wood digging into your ankle. So yeah, sturdy boots such as the Delta Active GTX are ideal for this cross-country purpose, and this is where they come into their own. They give you confidence with regards rough terrain, which I cannot say the same for a trail shoe. And I'm making the comparison because the comparisons are out there. So for me personally, the Delta Active GTX is a fabulous boot. Take you a while to get your soles used to the hard surface of the should I say, the base plate of the boot. I mean, I'm not a technical guy, I don't know about boot design. But you know, you go out often enough and you'll build up those muscle groups in your foot. You'll get used to the boot, in other words. But all round, yeah, fantastic. Possibly not brilliant for summer use. More autumn, winter. During the summer, you might want to get into your trail shoes, you might want to get into your trail boots. But as for really wet and cross-country conditions, these boots come into their own. Alright, that's the boot. What about the story? Or stories? Well, I wanted a boot. I wanted to get a new pair of boots. And so I thought, right, I'm going to head into town, I'm going to go to Trek It. There was only one store I was going to go to, and that was Trek It in Hereford. And they're a top rate store. They truly are a top rate store. So I headed downtown to get my pair of boots, and I knew it was going to be Scarpa, because it's a bit of a tradition here in my family. Between my twin and I, Paul had Scarpa. He wore Scarpa for years. And I always remember being on top of these hills and these mountains looking for rivers and whatnot, or in wet conditions. And he'd say to me, "How's your feet, Mark?" And I'd say, "Wet, Paul." And he'd say, "Ah, mine are dry." And he was really smug about it. So yeah, I thought, you know, after Paul passing away, he left me his money. And I thought I'd treat myself to a good pair of Scarpa boots. And I was in town and I was heading past Boots. For you guys in America, Boots is a big department store in the UK. I was heading past Boots and I bumped into an old friend, an old school friend called Paul Hughes. And we stopped to talk. And I said I was just off to get a pair of boots. And we exchanged pleasantries and said goodbye. And I headed off towards Trek It, which wasn't too far away from Boots. In the next street along, which is called Iron Gate, I passed by Paul outdoors with his wife, which was most unusual because I hadn't seen Paul for a long time. So that was Paul Hughes and Paul Outdoors on YouTube. If you want to check out Paul's channel, guys, it's well worth checking out. I'll put a link below and up above, okay? So I'm heading towards Trek It now, having bumped into two Pauls. But I walked into the store, I knew what I was heading for, I knew what I wanted. It was a pair of Scarpa boots. And I came out of the store having spent £200. Ben was good in there, he was alright. It's not always comfortable for me in Treckett because it's a high-end store. And I come from a different class, if you like. I haven't got that money to spend, do you know what I mean? But, you know, Ben was decent enough. And I came away with a boot. But I was a bit sad that I couldn't share it with Paul, you know, on the way home. I had these pair of boots and I talked to Paul. I said, hey Paul, I've seen 2 Pauls along the way. I was talking to my brother. And I was heading for Morrison, a big superstore in the UK. And after I'd done my shopping in Morrison, with my Scarpa boots in my hand, I had my rucksack on my back, Scarpa boots in my hand, I bumped into another Paul, Paul Birch, this time. Really, right outside the front of the door, Paul Birch. And Paul Birch was my neighbour at my former house, my former apartment, on the south side of the city, which is where Paul lived too. And I'm thinking to myself now, 3 Pauls in a row. I'm thinking, this is by no mistake. Paul is with me. I'm thinking to myself now. Paul is saying to me, yeah Mark, I like them boots. By no mistake, 3 Pauls in a row. I mean, how often does that happen, eh? And I was buying Scarpa because of Paul. Anyhow, Morrison is on a certain side of town. And Lofty Wiseman doesn't live far away. So I thought, right, on the way back home, I'll pop into Lofty's and share with him my boots, because ordinarily I'd share them with Paul. And a part of me was broken-hearted that I couldn't share them with my brother, with my twin. So I went to Lofty's, knocked on the door. He says, hey Mark, cup of tea. He's off straight away, cup of tea. How are you, son? All right, Loft, yeah, I'm okay. How are you? All right, son, yeah. Oh, get a cup of tea. So we sit down and we have a cup of tea and we start talking about the outdoors and start talking about the bushcraft show and what he's doing and this, that and the other. I say, I've got a pair of boots, Loft. I said, can I show you? He said, yeah, what you got? And I said, I've just bought a pair of Scarpa boots. I said, brilliant pair of boots. I said, Paul always wore Scarpa, I said. So I got them out and he picked him up. And of course, what many of you probably don't know is that Lofty used to do all the research and the purchasing for the SAS, for the regiment. He would buy and research all the top of the range gear and all the equipment. So he knows his kit. And he's taking a look at the boots now, pointing at the boots and telling me about the boots. And yeah, good pair of boots then, Mark, he said. And he turned around from me. He put the boots back down and I put them back in the box. And he turned away from me and I didn't expect this at all. It's not what I was looking for. I just wanted to share my boots with Lofty. He said, how much were they? And without thinking, I said, that 200 quid they were, Loft. I said, you know, willing to shoulder the cost myself. And he went into a drawer, he turned back round, he went, here you are, that's for 1 boot, he said. I took the money straight away. I said, oh, cheers, Loft, I said. Thanks. I said, I'll accept that. He said, oh no you will. It's hilarious. Lofty is funny. I'll tell you what guys, Lofty is hilarious, he is. Oh no you will, he said. I went, oh, thank you very much. I said, I only came round to share the boots, but brilliant, amazing, I said. Anyway, we continued our conversation, and inside I was so buoyed inside. I felt heartbroken that Paul wasn't with me and I couldn't share the boots with him. And now there was Paul's spirit in the boots, because 3 Pauls appeared during my shopping experience, and now Lofty's spirit was in the boots. So when I left Lofty's, I was animated. I was over the moon. I didn't expect that at all. So I came away with a really warm, heartfelt feeling. And when I went for my first hike in the boots, I was ecstatic. You know, they were a fantastic pair of boot, and there was some moral support there too, not only from Lofty, but from Paul. Paul was there in spirit. So that's the story behind the Delta Active GTX boot. Lofty Wiseman sponsored my boots. The SAS sponsored my boots, so I better had make best use of them, and more crucially, make my project work next year. I've got a project next year, and I'll share that at some other time, not just now. Suffice to say, it involves a lot of walking. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. It was quite a good story. A funny one, and a beautiful one, and a heartfelt one. All the links to the boot are down below. Links to Trek It as well. If you have any comments, please let me know below. You know me, I always get back to you. And if you want to give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs up. I always do. And if you want to subscribe for more videos in the future and more stories, don't forget to hit the button below. Alright guys, until next time, take good care.